Testing 1, 2.
Would you like to see very silly.
The cushion's better.
Yeah, the cushions are nice.
I meant to bring happy to give me.
I think, Evan, can you go into the studio and grab a... Oh, I guess she's got the cushion chair there. Cool. Throw this on the ground. There. Okay, so we're jumping into Ecclesiastes chapter 7. I've done this every Bible study. For those of you that have been here every single week, you hear me say the same thing. But I thought that today would be kind of cool to jump into the life of Solomon, and then to discuss, where he went wrong. Because sometimes we can think the book of Ecclesiastes, like it's obviously there's so much in here that's hard to digest. He says some pretty shocking things. Where did he go wrong, right? That's the question we have for ourselves. So if somebody wants to open up, we could all go there, Deuteronomy chapter 17. And we'll try to do like a fast forward through this. Do you mind, Evan, turning on that light and that light? It's a little left to right button. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verses 14 through to the end of chapter 17, so 14 through 20.
I'll read it. Laws concerning Israel's kings. When you come to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, and you possess it and dwell in it, and then say, I will set a king over me, like all the nations that are around me. You may indeed set a king over you, whom the Lord your God will choose. One from among your brothers you shall set as king over you. You may not put a foreigner over you, who is not your brother. Only he must not acquire many horses for himself, or cause the people to return to Egypt in order to acquire many horses, since the Lord has said to you, you shall never return that way again. And he shall not acquire many wives for himself, lest his heart turn away, nor shall he acquire for himself excessive silver and gold. And when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself in a book a copy of this law approved by the Levitical priests. And it shall be with him, and he shall read in it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear the Lord his God by keeping all the words of this law and these statutes and doing them, that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment, either to the right hand or to the left, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel.
Yeah, so here's the incredible thing about this passage. When you first read it, it seems like really dry. It's like, okay, the king should do this, king should do that. This is the nation of Israel, right? This is being given through the, we'll just call it like, I'm just going to say the period of Moses and the people of Israel in the desert. This is 400 years before Israel has a king. So God specifically, in the Old Testament, he set up a theocracy, right? The nation of Israel, where he was the God of the people of Israel. There was the Levitical priesthood. There would be like rulers such as like, let's say a prophet or someone like that, but not a king. Very, very different thing. 400 years before the Israelites asked for a king, God so he gives them his perfect highest will. And then he says, and when you guys get to the place where you want a king, even though I'm telling you, don't have a king, but when you get to that place, these are the rules for that king. I mean, it's giving like orders to the kids and saying, okay, You guys, none of you whatsoever are allowed to go into the refrigerator at this, like we have lunch figured out, we have dinner figured out. Mom and I are leaving this morning. And so when you break into the refrigerator and you steal the food, he's like, I know you're gonna do this. And so I'm just gonna lay this out for you anyway. It's a pretty painful passage. It's not God's highest will for the people of Israel. But what did the nation of Israel say? They got to the land where they were and they saw this tribe, the Hittites, hey, they have their king, and the Hivites, they have their king, and the Jebusites, and all the ites, everyone has a king. And here we are following after this like invisible Santa Claus in the sky, like to use like modern like terminology that is very nasty. I mean, I'm intentionally saying something nasty. But it's like, we can't see him, we can't touch him, we can't feel him, so we want something palpable that we can put our hands on, we can touch. We want a king. So God says, okay, so when you get to that place and you don't want my highest will, just be sure that the king doesn't take unto him a denoted status, right? And they were power. A lot of gold, a lot of silver. He isn't to have many wives. It just goes through and it lays out everything right here. And then it says, his heart will be led astray if he has multiple wives. And in addition to that, he's to write down the book of the law, and then the Levitical priests are to check on that. So we see actually the separation between church and state. It's really brilliant. And it says the priests are to check, and then he's to read over the law, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. So now let's fast forward 400 years. The nation of Israel said, we want a king. It went really poorly, right? So they have Saul, and they just invite in such just rolling waves of heartache. And then David is anointed king because God was displeased with Saul and his anointing left Saul. Saul was tormented by an evil spirit, right? David becomes king. We're going to roll forward. And now we have the son of David, Solomon. And as Solomon becomes king, he is entering into like a period where like the spiritual credit that I'll call was built up in the Davidic kingdom is now all manifesting itself in the life of Solomon. So let's go to 1 Kings chapter 10. And I'm going to skim through this pretty quickly. The Queen of Sheba had just left. There's a lot of dispute. I can't find where the Queen of Sheba was from. Some people say like it was actually she was from Uganda. She was from Ethiopia. She could have been from, maybe towards the Arabian Peninsula. Like honestly, like there's so many scholars that fight over it. I'm just going to say the Queen of Sheba just left right here. And just to show you that like the rulers of the entire world were coming to pay homage to Solomon. And it says, Solomon's great wealth, 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 14. Now the weight of the gold that came to Solomon 1 year was 666 talents of gold. Question for any Christians in the room. Do you want 666 of anything? You just see that number and you just go, Could I have one less talent of gold? What's that?
Ecclesiastes is in this Bible 666.
What's that?
It is in this Bible 666.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Page.
Oh, it's that page as well. That's funny. I'm not saying that that's significant, the number of talents, but the weight of the gold that came to Solomon 1 year was 666 talents. I have right here a note in my Bible. Actually, you know what? I'll skip over it. It's just millions to billions of dollars, right? We're just going to say like hundreds of billions of dollars. Besides that which came from the explorers and the business of the merchants, from the kings of the west and the governors of the land, King Solomon made 200 large shields of beaten gold. 200 shekels of gold went into each shield. We're just going to like skim through this. The king put the shields into the house of the forest of Lebanon. The king also made a great ivory throne and overlaid it with the finest gold. Trying to fast forward so we just have the impression of the thing. All the kings, verse 21, all King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were of silver. Silver was not considered as anything in the days of Solomon. I mean, did he abide by the commands given in Deuteronomy? No, not by a long shot. He has gathered unto himself a lot of gold, and it's unto himself. Thus King Solomon excelled all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. And the whole earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had put into his mind. Again, it says in Deuteronomy chapter 17 that you are not to exalt yourself over your brother. And it's like, God gives us, we have this idea that we all, we Americans, we created Superman, right? And Superman it's the one who's going to save us from all of our heartache. But that's been, that archetype exists for all time. Go back to the ancient Greeks, they had their own versions of Superman, right? Whether it was like, individual figures or whether it was gods, whatever it might be. So God actually gives to the nation of Israel several supermen. The one, the wisest man who ever lived, Solomon. The other, the poet warrior, David. Another superman, Samson, strongest man who ever lived. All of the best, the most, the very, he gave it to them just to demonstrate to them how far short they fall. Solomon gathered together chariots and horsemen. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horsemen who he stationed in the chariot cities. Let's fast forward, 1 Kings chapter 11. Now King Solomon loved many foreign women, along with the daughter of Pharaoh. So it specifically says in Deuteronomy chapter 7, don't go back to Egypt to get your horses. And the admonition is to us as believers, when you have come into God's kingdom, don't go back to the world for your wealth. God will take care of you, but you don't have to go back to that way. Fast forward, you shall not enter into marriage with them, people from other nations, neither shall they with you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clung to these in love, 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For when Solomon was old, his wives turned away his heart after other gods, and his heart was not wholly true to the Lord, as was the heart of David his father. And so Solomon would go to the outlying hills outside of Jerusalem, and he would build at the top of the hills temples to these false gods. Imagine being in the holy city of God, the God of Israel, and then looking up and seeing a temple to Chemosh, and seeing one to, I don't know the names of all the different ones, but it was like Marduk and different ones of that sort, let's say. This is what we call syncretism, where foreign religions, foreign gods, foreign ideas start mixing with the one true God. And it's just, the recipe is bad. So jumping back to Ecclesiastes, we have chapter 7. We have Solomon. He's exhausted so many options. He devoted himself to producing, I'm going to in just enjoyment. I'm going to drink a lot, I'm going to laugh a lot, and that was vanity. I'm going to devote myself to architecture. I'm going to build things. That was empty. I'm going to devote myself. I'm going to devote myself. I'm going to devote myself. And we get to the end. He gets to the end of all these things, and he says, it's all vanity. It's all empty. And so that's where we are right here, right now. And the motif that is going through this whole entire chapter, Ecclesiastes 7, is better than. Better than. So again, the motif of the entire book is, and I looked out under the sun, and I saw that all is vanity, essentially. And then here, another motif that he has is better than, better than. But what we're going to get to eventually is, okay, he's working through better than in a very earthly mindset. What is best? And that's where we find that the Old Testament, by design, the insufficiency of the Old Testament, not because it's like a flawed book, but because God was laying the groundwork to build his building. So we have the foundation of the Old Testament, and God was going to come with the subsequent ministry of Jesus, right? And it was a whole new dispensation, right? But let's jump into Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Let's go verse by verse tonight rather than through many verses, because seemingly these are detached thoughts, but we're going to see there's actually a string connecting them. So does someone want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 1?
A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death on the day of birth.
So does somebody want to jump in there and relay their thoughts? Or even just questions?
Those are two very different thoughts. One starts at describing how being reputable is better than looking wealthy or looking respectable.
Yeah.
But then the immediate second sentence is that the day of death is better than the day of birth. And it just makes me wonder how those two verses are, what their link is to each other.
Yeah, I think we'll find a little bit of it, in the verses, but also, like any skilled author or like a painter, when you get really close, you can't make sense of things. Sometimes you gotta pan out, and then you see the whole picture, and then the piece makes sense within the whole, you know what I mean? And what I see right here, a good name is better than precious ointment. So again, in his earthly wisdom, he's looking out in raw honesty, and he's saying another version says a good name is better than, does anyone have perfume?
Wasn't it great
Yeah,
riches
perfume, yeah.
Yeah, it could be
somewhere?
riches elsewhere, yeah. What does your version say?
Precious ointment.
Precious ointment, yeah. And what does yours say?
Perfume.
Yeah, perfume.
So I
So,
think it's just a good name is better than fine perfume. It's what you do on this earth is more important than what you're. People notice perfume, right?
yep,
Oh, perfume smells great. You did great. You did this, but did you really do great?
Yep.
What's your real purpose? What did you do?
exactly.
I don't know. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly
I don't know
exactly how I see
right?
it.
This is the thing. It's this is my interpretation of it. But somebody might interpret it different than what I do. But that's the way I look at it.
Yeah,
it's really, what are you about?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you smell like.
Yep, I think that's exactly it.
Yeah, okay.
In the book of Revelation, I was surprised, we're all, we're saved by faith, faith in Christ, but he's very clear in Revelation, we're going to be judged by what we do on this earth.
Yeah.
I mean, this just lays it out there, just kind of like this.
It's been scaring me lately, I think in a healthy way. Because when I was young, it was just get into heaven, just get into heaven. And then you read it and it's just yeah, you're gonna be judged for every bad thing you say about someone. And I was just there's gonna be a huge, what do they call the huge screens in the baseball stadiums? The Megatron? There's gonna be a Megatron, and it's gonna be Dave Burns on Wednesday morning. Kevin McFord, it's but yeah, we will be judged by what we do. That's what you're saying.
I hope that I'm judged on what my soul really is at the end. What, do I have love? Or am I a person of hate?
Yeah.
And I think, I'll be judged on that. That's I hope.
Well,
I don't know. I'm not making up, but what I'm saying is that I know that I'm real and that I love everyone, but just that, that I'm judged on that. Not, even if I'm wrong or whatever, but just that he knows that my heart is in the right place.
Yeah, and that's, so Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, let's say, both of them, the Jehovah's Witnesses were born in the Midwest in the 19th century. Mormons were born in the Midwest in the 19th century. And the common denominator between those two cults, they're not Christians at all. They're not. The common denominator is I got to work really hard to earn my salvation. And it's very depressing. And I've known many Jehovah's Witnesses, not one or two, I mean many, who've come out of it. And when they actually find that it's by grace that we've been saved, not by works, lest any man should boast, it's you have confidence. You have confidence. You are all your sins are paid for. You are redeemed. You're forgiven. You know what I mean? And that's the confidence that we have. And so when I speak to Jehovah's Witnesses, I say Christianity can be really a joyful thing. You can live life joyfully because you're returning your life unto God as what? As a fragrant aroma. So that actually brings us over to the book of Leviticus, where our sins have been atoned for because Jesus is the ultimate sacrifice. Done. But that being said, how we live our lives on a day-to-day basis, we can either be a stench in God's nostrils, but in Leviticus it talks about the sacrifices coming, and that there were offerings made by fire, and it says, and a pleasing aroma unto the Lord. So in Christ, now that we're in him, how are we stewards of the life that we have between now and death? And that's where we can think to ourselves like, hey, like the way I just held my daughter in the morning by the window and just like talked to her and she was just like giggling and stuff, that's a pleasing aroma to God. That will go up into heaven. If I woke up this morning and I said to my daughter, like, I just don't really feel like, she's 3 years old, I just don't really feel like hearing it, just leave me alone, Dad needs alone time. That's God sees that, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, we have this like gift of being able to offer our lives now. The ultimate sacrifice having been paid, now our lives can become a sacrifice that's pleasing to him on a daily basis, you know? So this passage right here, good name is better than precious ointment. It's a funny image because like someone who's like going out and they haven't really taken care of themselves, they're an awful person, but it's just like, okay, like Botox lips, like how many events have I been to, lips like it's just sticking out here, and you see like other things are just augmented, and then spray tan, like I'm in the art world, I go into the Hamptons, and like everything is just like, everything, yeah. When I go like into the Hamptons, these events, I'm like, it just kind of blows my mind because, what's that? Yeah, I can't smile, and it's like, and then it's like, do you really need that ointment? Do you really need that perfume? Like some people have had alterations that I understand, like that's fine, but are you relying on that? Or is your heart taken care of? And that's what they're saying is like, is it a quick fix or is it the slow, steady dignity like unto God? That's a harder thing. You know what I mean? We all think of the teenagers with Axe body spray. My goodness. I don't know if you got, my nephews, man, I would go over the house and it would be like somebody fumigated the house. And it's like, maybe just shower rather than covering yourself with Axe body spray before you go out. Did you have any thoughts or?
Oh, no, I was thinking, well, the judgment seat of Christ, you know, it's a safe place for us, and I find it to be private. Because we, you know, when we pass over, even now, the sins that we understand with sin, the depth of sin we never realize.
Yeah.
You know, with our actions, our thoughts, or things that we said. And then also the good things, and I think it's just, I found it to just be a very personal reckoning, getting to know Jesus and him, you know, just showing us ourselves, and that we're safe, you know, and there's rewards. And so the good and the bad is just discussed, and it's not a place of fear.
Yeah. And the whole idea of lay up for yourselves treasures, you know, that don't corrupt, like we can like lay up for ourselves treasures on the other side of eternity. It's just, that is a really beautiful thought. Yeah. And I think the thing that I feel very like ashamed of is the things that I knew that were wrong, that I pursued anyway. They will be called up before. Like right now, I would never want like, you know, people in our immediate life, like we don't want them to know the worst about us, right? Like in our heads. But it won't be that way because we're going to be standing before someone who loves us so completely. And it's just like to live life with that awareness that, oh, I want a good name. I want to be a pleasing aroma to you, you know? So, and the day of death, then the day of birth. We're gonna have to cover better ground. It's 7:30 and we're on the verse 1. Yeah. But the whole idea of the day of death and the day of birth, I just wanted to share my own personal experience. Years ago, I was doing a series of portrait commissions up in Oyster Bay on Long Island, and I heard that Teddy Roosevelt, I was reading his biography, he was buried in Oyster Bay. And so I was like, oh, you must have to like go through some huge monument and some officer must be there and they just swipe you and this and that. And no, It's just a little hill. I just walk up the hill. It's the most charming spot on all of Long Island. It overlooks the Long Island Sound. And there is Teddy Roosevelt's grave. And I look at that I've actually been there dozens of times now. Anytime I'm on the North Shore, I will stop by Teddy Roosevelt's grave. And I just stand there. I just look and I'm like, it sobers me to think that here's someone, Teddy Roosevelt's brother, I forget his name, maybe Kermit, I forget, died as an absolutely, like, one of the worst cases of alcoholism I've ever heard of my whole life, where like he like truly, like someone who like full on lost control, where he was in a perpetual state of drinking huge bottles of liquor, like all through the night, all through the morning. And Teddy Roosevelt held him in his arms as his brother died. You know, they inherited a lot of money, and his brother died like a very ignoble death. And then Teddy Roosevelt faced that, and he was just like, I'm going to live my life with purpose. And it's interesting to me, because I look at Teddy Roosevelt and I'm like, I want to learn from his death. And then as I read Teddy Roosevelt's biography, he actually thought a lot about the people before him who had died and how they lived purposefully. So I don't think this verse is dark in the day of death and the day of birth, because when I stand there, there's not a negative thing going through my whole entire body. I'm really inspired. I'm like, to live your life with intent. It's just, I don't know, I like it a lot. So I don't know if anyone has another thought there.
It's only a better place, dying is only a better place when you know the Lord.
Yeah.
Not if you don't, you know.
Yep. Yeah, and that's where, like, the assurance that we have, where, like, I used him as an example because, like, I mean, I don't like to have, like, presidential idolatry, but I used him as an example as, like, someone who grew up in a Christian culture. Everything I ever read, I'm not going to go into his life, like, in specifics, but it's like he chose to live life as a steward of all that God had poured out into his life, and to live it like in a godly way, and to turn the country. Like, he really fought against corruption in New York City among the cops. He fought Tammany Hall. He fought all these different things. And then as he got to a higher level, you know what I mean? And it's like this whole idea of, he knew that he was eventually going to pass. So he lived every moment making it worthwhile. I'm like, it's a grave here. And I'm like, it means a lot to me. So,
I'm just saying that, like, my own, growing up, I'm the youngest of 5, and nobody else in my family had children except me. You know, and I think the reason I had children is because of my wife. You know, she just, like, had a lot of faith when I met her, and she was into it. And, like, just growing up, whatever, poor household, alcoholic father, you brought that up. It's like my brothers and sisters were like, no, I don't want to bring any kids into this. They just had that kind of negative effect about bringing somebody into the world. So it's just, you know, it's like, and the thing is, yeah, the day of death is better because we're going to the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, you know, but, you know, the day of death is better than the day of birth, you know? So, no, and I'm so glad that I had children, you know? Like, it's, like, when I look at Christmas, it's not just celebrating Christ, it's like the birth of life, you know what I'm saying? That's the way I look at
Sure.
Christmas, too. You know, it's just like, children bring so much joy, and that's something that I experience with having it, but I don't know if that ties into that, but I'm just saying I'm kind of bringing it around to a different approach, but it's just, it's weird how my siblings just, like, now looking back, because I was the same way. I didn't know if I wanted to have children to bring into this world, because I saw so much pain, you know, and like financial pain, just to everything, you know, so it's like, I was like, well, why would I want to do this to someone else, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, whether that's selfish or just not, but, you know, it's like meeting my wife, I was like, and then I had kids, and it's like, when I had my kids, it was like, it put a lightning bolt through my family, though. You know what I'm saying? It was just like, my brothers and my sister, you know, I have a sister that's, you know, 70, 50, and none of them had kids.
Wow.
Because, and I was the first one to have it, and it really just brought life,
yeah.
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 It's like, And that's why I look at like Christmas that way, whether you want to believe, whatever. But like the fact that like we'll celebrate life. That's the way I look at it. But anyway.
Yeah, that's the meaning of the lights in the tree, because
Yeah.
it's lights shining in the darkness. It's a symbol for Jesus. And yeah, I like that. It's the point of the year in which it is the darkest. It's the longest, deepest dark. And then it turns and it gradually becomes lighter again. So yeah, it's pretty cool. So I forgot to pull up the image, so that's a tombstone that I love going to. But I had the chance when I was in early college to go to a spot that was even more moving, and that was the jail cell where they believe Paul the Apostle was held. And so they don't know, like between the Philippian like period and also Thessalonica and different things, but they took us like way off the beaten path, and then we went and they brought us down into this jail cell, and it was all stacked stone, and they said, our best guess is that this is it right here. It was not that. It wasn't beautiful. It was harsh. It was awful. It was arid. It was kind of like the landscape was austere. And I was just struck by the whole idea of someone who is living their life unto eternity. So Teddy gets the really great wrought iron and everything like that. And again, I really like that spot. But Paul the Apostle in the jail cell singing hymns after he had been beaten. And Paul the Apostle said, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. I mean, he understood this even better than Solomon. Funny note on this, I was like, this is really cool. So I picked up a rock. I remember this, and I put it in my pocket. I was so taken up by the whole scene. We get into the tour bus, and then somebody announced like really loud over the thing, did anybody take a rock from the, and I was like, I did. And they're like, and they got really mad. They were like, there's a huge sign. If everyone who walked in there took a rock off the ground, the place would go down 6 feet in a year. I was like, I don't know. And they were like, it was in like 24 languages. Don't take a rock from, I was like, I kind of got caught up in the moment. So.
My brother did that at the Acropolis.
Yeah, at the Acropolis.
And they started chasing him.
Yeah, they'll chase you, yeah. It makes sense.
So since you took the stone, did they like throw you into the jail cell and clock it?
Yeah. I'm just like Paul, I'm a martyr. All right, so let's jump forward. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Does somebody want to jump in there?
It's sort of the number your days.
Yeah.
Saying days are precious. Time is fleeting. We're grass in the field or flowers for
Yeah.
poof.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be 62. I'm like, how did that happen? It just goes faster and faster.
Yeah.
Spitting through the tins of coffee. But I guess it's that. I measure your days definitely from Proverbs, I think.
Yeah.
But it's to count the worth of each day and each moment, sort of like what you're saying, to live with intent and to not waste it, because it's precious. It's a gift from God.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. Better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart.
No, I'm sorry.
Sure, no, go for it.
No, I'm just saying it's better to go to a house of mourning. You go to a house of mourning, you're helpful. You're helping people.
Yeah.
In the morning.
Yeah.
Or if you go to a house of feasting, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're eating, you're drinking.
Yeah. That's
So,
exactly it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
It's useful, and I went to a few comedy clubs in my life, and I don't know, I'm sure there are great comedy clubs out there. I'll keep going to comedy clubs because I think it's worthwhile. But I haven't had a good experience yet. Like I went to one in Providence, and I remember it was just one of the most depressing spots I've ever been to in my whole life. And everyone was like, kind of like fake laughing, like forcing the laughter, and the guy who's delivering the jokes, and it was just like, probably, if you have your stars of comedy up here. He was probably ranked down here. But still, I just didn't really enjoy the setting. I just really, there's something about it. I felt like running out of the room. It's just like, I don't really think everyone's having a great time here. But then there are times where, let's say it's a season of heartache and sit around at a table with like really good friends. And there's actually a joy in there, even though like maybe something difficult is going on. Like it's just, I'd prefer that than going off to a comedy club in Providence, Rhode Island. It's just, so I look at this in literal terms and I'm like, I've lived through that. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face, the heart is made glad. Does anyone want to jump in there?
Yeah, well, I think that, and mourning too, I had looked it up, it's a time of, reflection and self-examination, and so sorrow, when we have sorrow, it brings us, to our knees, and it causes us to look at, or whenever trouble comes or something, it causes inner reflection, and wake up to yourself and maybe what's going on, what God is trying to say, than having a good time all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a quote by Voltaire. It says, "History is filled with the sound of silken slippers going downstairs and wooden shoes coming up." And then that was kind of evolved like in a similar way. We've all heard this. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. That's Michael Hope. But I look at that and I'm like, I think of my own life when I was running a huge studio on the North Shore. I remember an artist flew in from Italy and I had him teaching. And we sat down and we were at the Three Village Inn and he looked across the dinner table and he goes, "Well, you've arrived. Like, you're there. Like, you have done it. Like, this, we're all jealous of you." I literally that morning, my head felt like it was like a boiling pot, like it was going to explode off of my shoulders. I couldn't handle what was going on. I wasn't happy. I was like really, really miserable. Every which way I turned, there was pressure. Somebody was yelling at me for something. Somebody was mad at me for something. Someone wanted to say something nice. And I was like, I just want to be left alone. It was the worst season of my whole life. And the guy looks across the table and he's like, "You have it. You are happy." And I was just like, "No, I'm not." And when my whole world came collapsing down 5 years ago and I lost all of that, that was hard. It was really hard. But in those quiet hours, I'd wake up early in the morning, the boys would be asleep, and I would just call out to God, and there's this sweet silence. And in the pain that I had when I lost 100% of my income and everything ended and collapsed, ironically, it was actually, there was great joy in that. And nobody from the outside would ever have known it, like ever, but I lived it. I was like, I strangely prefer this right now, the struggle that we have. So someone want to read verse 4?
I'll read it. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fool is in the house of pleasure.
And then also verse 5.
Okay. Is it better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools? That's it.
Yeah, if anyone sees anything there.
Okay.
Morning. When I read that, I wanted to say, learning and being serious, but it's not what mourning means. It's a very specific word. But I wonder why the dichotomy of the wise are in mourning and the fools are in pleasure. What would they be mourning?
Well, so it's interesting, like the way that there's this passage in Ezekiel. If I'm wrong with Ezekiel, I'll tell you next week, but I think it's Ezekiel, where the angel of the Lord is told to go through the city, and all the individuals in the city that were mourning, they would place like a mark on their forehead to say that this is someone who's mourning for the state of Israel. Israel was really in horrific sin. They were slaughtering their own children, sacrificing them to idols. They were really wealthy, but the nation of Israel was really not, they turned away from God. But men who mourned, the men and women who mourned, were given a mark on their forehead. And the angel, as it went through the city, the ones who mourned. And then you fast forward, and Jesus was called a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, right? And Jesus stood on the mount and he said, "Blessed are all those who mourn, for they shall be comforted." And so the way that I've always looked at it is like the age that we're living in, like Margaret will say to me sometimes, like, it's funny how like certain things going on in society like bother you so much. Like certain aspects of just young people just going off the rails into weird things. Like, she's like, it really grieves you. I'm like, I kind of think it's godly to like mourn when the people are straying. You know what I mean? But it also, the comfort that you receive when you see people turned away from darkness. Like, you might be in the house of mourning, but you'll also be comforted more. The comfort I feel when I see a group of people have like the light shine in their eyes is, I think, a joy that other people may have if they're not walking with God. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you flip that, what's the other side of mourning? Hedonism. It's just, I want pleasure and I want it quick, like pleasure now. And if you're hedonistic, then you're not at all going to be involved. You're not going to care about others around you. And, you know, I didn't plan on this, but let's flip backwards just a few pages to Proverbs chapter 31. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 2 says, "What are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? What are you doing, son of my vows?" Fast forward, says, "Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings." And then it has a long passage here. "It's not for kings to drink wine, for rulers to take strong drink." Why should rulers and kings not drink wine and drink strong drink? It says it right here, "Lest they drink and forget what has been decreed and pervert the rights of the afflicted." If you fast forward down a few verses, it says, "Open your mouth, king, for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and the needy." We have two options in this life. We can indulge ourselves in like hedonistic, self-centered pleasure, or we can have our hearts attuned to the needy that are around us, you know? And that's going to invite in some pain, but we'll be comforted, you know? And those are the options given right here in Proverbs chapter 31. And I think that back there, because again, we're giving a dichotomy right there, right? We have two options. And that's what I've always seen it as being.
Well, you give yourself the pleasure, you know, you're going towards death, or you make that decision, am I gonna go towards God?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's the only route with going to pleasure.
Yeah, that is,
Is
yeah.
either take yourself to death with pleasure,
Yeah,
or you're gonna find Christ or God,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
That's the only choice you have there, you know? When you're being wise, you know, obviously you're helping, you don't have to worry about it. That's it. You're being wise,
yeah,
and you're helping people, and you're staying in the lane and being good.
yeah,
But when you go to pleasure, that's it. You're either going to go all the way to death or find God.
yeah. If that's where you're finding your meaning,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. You're going to take it to the very end.
Yeah.
And when I do jail ministry, like going in, I teach art classes. I haven't taught for a while now. Man, the number of the young guys, they're 17 years old. I did work with the older men as well, but not one of them ever said that I meant to get here. Not one of them. They would talk about powdered heroin, and they're like, I just was getting my fix, and then I need more of a fix. I need more. You know what I mean? And then they overdosed, or they did a crime when they were under the influence, or something like that. And it's amazing. I mean, I'm talking about hundreds of guys that I would see, and out of the hundreds, 100% of them, they were like, I never meant to be here. I never wanted to be here. It just broke my heart, you know. Jumping forward, verse 6. Somebody want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 6.
Like the crackling of thorns under the pot, So is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless.
Anyone?
Including something super dry twig and throwing it on fire. It's like boom, and it's
Pop.
done.
Yep.
It's a popping and a down.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Of a fool. So it's just empty-headed laughter. I mean, you can see it around you. You know, it's not something that comes from within. Like joy and laughter and the Lord and valuable things. But a fool just laughs. Like you said, a drunkard or someone on drugs. You know.
Yeah. And just the whole idea of like, what is a fire for? It's to keep you warm. It's it's comforting. Just the times of my life. I go back to the art world a lot. Sorry if I go to the east end of Long Island so much. I don't mean to be like so cruel, but I've just had bad experiences. I've had bad experiences elsewhere as well. But it's where a lot of people congregate. But I went to an event, and the event was beautiful. We raised money for this really cool cause. And then they were like, afterwards, come to to hang out. And I was like, okay. And so I went to this like little, I don't know what it was, a restaurant on Shelter Island. It was crackling of thorns in a fire. It was just like pop. It was just a lot of really obnoxious personalities. Everyone was just trying to like I don't even know what the word is, outperform the next person over. Everyone was flaunting. It was just like, it was such like an unhappy environment. And I was like, I can't wait to get out of here. I made it back home to Margaret, and I just walked into the house and just like the calm, the peace, you know what I mean? It's just like waking up in the morning, little kids running over to you. Like that's the warmth of a fire. But sitting around, we literally were sitting around a bonfire on Shelter Island. Just one of the unhappiest moments of my life. I was like, get me out of here.
It's amazing how you just can't be rewarded for like what your talent is or what you do. It's like you have to pet everybody's ego. You have to play the game.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's what you have to do to make money. Unless you want to stay true to yourself. You'll make a living, you'll buy a house, you do that, but like, if you want to get to that next level, it's like, you just see, I don't, not in all cases, but in a lot.
That's the world's equation.
And any like business or whatever it is, it's just like, okay, stroke egos, whatever, it's just unfortunate, but that's the way life is.
I mean, the English have like a saying, I don't remember it exactly, but it's stand on the head of the person beneath you and kiss the boots of the person above you. And it's like, I mean, you could say that from Wall Street to the art world, like that would seem like a pretty accurately. Like, I've been told that unions are like that.
You can be a great person and do great things, but people for some reason look at the person that has the money. That's the way our society is. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that's the way it seems. You reward, and you even question how they got there or what they did.
Yeah, I mean, that is like very much, the American way. It's very much like the New York way. And that's where the previous chapter we were talking about, the love of money. And to like, just return to the whole idea, like Job was the richest person in all of the land, right? Abraham was among the wealthiest, like, man in all the land. Like, again, the Bible gives us instances of people who were incredibly rich, and they were the closest to God. But it wasn't anything that, they didn't love it. They said, when Job lost everything, he said, the Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. So the people who go through life, and they say, the Lord gives, if they have a lot, well, God gave it to me. Like, it's a great worldview. If God takes it all away, well, he gave it to me in the first place. I was glad. Thanks for renting it out to me. You know what I mean? Jumping over verse 7, I'll read it. Surely oppression drives the wise into madness, and a bribe corrupts the heart. I'm going to read a few right here. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. The whole idea of a bribe corrupts the heart we heard earlier, a good name is rather to be chosen, right? A bribe corrupts the heart. Let's hold on to that. The whole idea of I'm going to have immediate satisfaction right now, right? Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. The classic thing is we have a runner here in the midst of us is like when you look out on a race as a soccer player, my coach in college would always say to me in soccer, he would always say, I don't care who comes out of the gate the fastest on the field, you maintain your energy. And then I want you in the final 15 minutes of that match to just go like animals and just, the final 15 minutes is what it's all about. A lot of soccer games are lost in the final 15 minutes because the end of a thing, better is the end of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. How many races have you seen where someone comes out of the gate and just like, boom, and and then they lose steam, and then they're just totally lapped by someone else. But it's an application to life as well, right? Where when I was young and I went to a youth group, we were encouraged wrongly, not by all the leaders. I had a great youth pastor, but we were encouraged to go up to the altar and they're really it was charismatic, and they encouraged you to really cry and yell and scream and worship and stuff like that. And I just always thought I don't really want to. I'll sing, but I'm not going to cry any fake tears, and I don't know that this is sustainable. I don't know if doing this at the age of 15 means that I'm going to be walking with God by the time I'm 35. And I saw that a lot of people who went down that road of external expressions of emotion, kind of conjured up. We can naturally express ourselves before God, but I'm talking about something that was impatient and thought about the effect in the moment. Do you know what I mean? And it bothered me, and I saw a lot of people walk away from Christianity, just walk away from God, and I wondered if there was ever anything there. It's not my place to judge. But jumping forward to verse 9, be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. Then let's pause right here, because there's a really interesting thing that we see right here. The whole idea of being not quick in your spirit to become angry, patient in spirit, moving forward with different things. We see over and over again this exhortation with these proverbs to a central theme. And think of for a moment just think of a few proverbs that we have in our life around us, and what a common thread through them might be. Better one stitch in time than a stitch in nine. Have you ever heard that? Better a bird in the hand than two in the bush. Think of there's so many different he who tries to catch, how does it go? The German proverb.
He who tries to catch two rabbits will catch none.
Yeah, he who tries to catch two rabbits will catch none. Focus on the one thing that you can do. But over and over again, what we're seeing here is there is a theme. This all looks disjointed and broken up, but there's a theme throughout the whole thing. It goes back to the life of Jacob and Esau. Esau he had a birthright, right? He received his birthright, and then he, in the moment, wanted immediate gratification. And so what did he do? For immediate gratification, he said, I will sell the thing that is most precious that was given to me by my father. I'll sell it for my immediate pleasure, my immediate satisfaction of something. And afterwards, it says that Esau, he sought the thing with tears, but he couldn't have it. It's a really painful thing in the Bible. You actually read that, and it kind of hurts. And what are we seeing through all these different proverbs? We're seeing this whole idea of people who are indulging themselves in the present don't do well. And it's this is for me. And so we wonder as we read all these things, we're okay, all these exhortations to be patient, to wait, to think about the distance, to think about the end of your life, to think, with all these exhortations, like there is the better way, right? And he's describing to us the better way. I think we should chop this chapter in half because we're right at the end of our time here. But let's wrap up with, we'll read another verse or two in here. Then I want to jump over to the New Testament very quickly. Does somebody want to read Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 10?
Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions.
Yeah. So, right there, the writer is condemning what? He's condemning nostalgia. So, Margaret and Sue watching Downton Abbey are hereby condemned for. We have a nostalgic culture, we do. And we look back to the good old days. And it's interesting because the Bible never talks about the good old days in terms of, like, let's just call it year zero for a moment. Year zero, humanity was good. And then the further away you get from year zero, we just degrade more and more and more because this is when we were good and now we're bad. And the Bible condemns that and actually says, no, that's not the proper way of thinking about something. You're probably glossing over details of context because the only time where humanity has it well, like things are going well, is when we're walking close to God. So it's not just like looking back to the former days. There are periods that are better than other periods, but those are periods where we're walking close to God. And so we hear like a very reasonable exhortation right here. Why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. We see again and again, wisdom is good with an inheritance, wisdom. All the way up to verse 12, for the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. But let's wrap up at verse 13, consider the work of God, who can make straight what he has made crooked. As we fast forward a little bit, in my vain life I've seen everything. There's a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness. There's a wicked man who prolongs his life in his evil doing. Now he's getting to the place where he's actually finding that wisdom is futile. For what reason? You can live your life in a really godly, noble way, and you could die young. Like, didn't Billy Joel warn us? You know? And that's what the author is faced with. He's like, there are really evil people that live really long lives, and then there are really godly people who die young. Like, that's also out of our control. And so he's coming to the end of wisdom saying, you can be as wise as you want to be, and yet even your life is still not within your hands. Consider the work of God. Who can make straight what he's made crooked? Like, you could try your best and a car just takes you out broadside and it's over, even though you were the most godly person in the town of Islip. It's a little bit of a hard thought. But let's jump over quickly to 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 18. Does someone want to read? You know what? I'll fast forward through it so that we can read quick. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. For the word of the cross is folly. So we've been talking about folly and wisdom to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Here is God. He's coming to us and he said, I gave you the wisest person in the world. And he came to the end and he couldn't even see sense. Even in wisdom, he couldn't even see sense. But God is saying, I'm actually going to tell you something. That the most foolish thing that you could possibly think of is actually my highest wisdom. It's incredible. Verse 20, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 20. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of the age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, Think of that verse right there. In the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom. Are the philosophers going to get into heaven ahead of like a steam fitter who like works in Brooklyn every day? No. What if his IQ is off the charts? Like he's brilliant. Is he going to get into heaven ahead of, the common worker or something like that? Like, no, not necessarily. It says right here, the world did not know God through wisdom. Then it says, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified. So again, let's go back to the motif of Solomon's chapter, Ecclesiastes chapter. What is better? What is better? Right here, but we preach Christ crucified. What is best? This is God's best. This is the culmination of everything that he was laying for all those millennia. Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified. It's the inversion of everything that we would expect to be. He lost the battle, seemingly. He died at the height of his power. Jesus was the richest human who ever walked the earth, but when he died, he only had a cloak, right? Everything that we think of as being wise or smart, Jesus inverted it. Because the art world before, it seems like the equation is you kind of have to lick the boots of the person above you and step on the person below you. But Jesus came along and said, I have a totally different way. The way up is down. It's just so beautiful. Then it says, a stumbling block to the Jews and folly to the Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God, and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. So with that, let's, sorry for keeping you 5 minutes over. Let's just close with a quick prayer. Lord, thank you so much for your word. Thank you as ever, Lord, that it's a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. God, I pray that you'd help us to live out, Lord, the truths that you impart from your word, Lord. That as we go through the week, that we would just see you, Jesus, Lord, that we would, Lord, the message of the cross is foolishness to this world. It's the dumbest thing that could possibly ever be presented to us as humans, Lord, and yet it's the greatest wisdom, Lord. Lord, and we receive the work that you did on the cross. We know that we can't attain these heights by ourselves, Lord, but that you came down, Lord, and you emptied yourself out, Lord. Just pray that you'd give us minds, Lord, for the highest wisdom, Lord, through you. In your name we pray. Amen. I'm going to go hit the button. Be right back.